Have you ever found yourself replaying the moment that someone left your life? It can feel like your world stops when someone that you care about and love walks away from you. But what if they didn't abandon you? What if the ending was actually a divinely timed moment or maybe a redirection? If this is still hard for you, and if you are finding that there are parts of yourself that are clinging to and holding on to whatever situation brought you here, I see you. We always begin with gratitude, so I want to thank you for being here and let you know that I am so very honored to have your energy and your presence here in this space. Peace. I am LA, licensed therapist, holistic wellness coach, and guide, and the creator of this channel, Reconnect with You. So I want to talk to you today about healing abandonment issues and addressing abandonment wounds. And I want to first honor what comes up as it relates to abandonment before we even get into reframing. And I want to just acknowledge the grief that can accompany the ending of a relationship or someone walking away from you or leaving your life, especially without an explanation. There can be grief there for you to process. There might also be some confusion that comes up for you. And you might also find that you are blaming yourself for whatever it is that happened as you are trying to make sense of and understand what it is that took place. And I want to share with you that when people leave our lives, it can trigger some of our deepest fears and insecurities just around you feeling like you're enough, and also you knowing that you are worth staying for. You are worthy of investing in, regardless of how things might have ended in a given situation. And I want to briefly name attachment styles. I won't go into this in depth, but I do want to mention it as a resource, because when we are talking about abandonment issues and healing abandonment wounds, attachment is also likely at play. So in therapy, there is a theory called attachment theory, and there are a few different attachment styles, and I'm going to link a couple of resources for you to this video. The first one is a book. It's called Attached, and that is by Amir Levine and Rachel Keller, I believe are the authors' names. So that book is a book that I've read and that I've recommended to several of my clients. And that book is a really great resource just to help you learn more about attachment theory and the different attachment styles, as well as how they might be showing up in your behavior. The second resource that I want to offer you is a free assessment for you to take and help you figure out what your attachment style is. And this assessment will also include a description of your attachment style and each of the attachment styles. So I want to offer that as well. But the idea with attachment theory is that the way that your caregivers, likely your parents, responded to your needs when you were growing up shapes how you show up in your relationships and how you go about getting your needs met in your relationships. So when we talk about abandonment wounds and really exploring abandonment issues, attachment is definitely a helpful resource and another gateway for you to just more self-awareness around your attachment style. I also want to talk about abandonment in the sense of it being more of a pattern. So abandonment can show up as more patterned and generational, meaning that it's not a one-time event. So if you are here, you likely have a history of abandonment wounds, maybe struggle with your attachment style and just how that might be showing up for you. And I want to just name that when you have abandonment issues, it's likely that you have experienced abandonment over the course of time and also in multiple settings and different types of relationships. So I want to also acknowledge and just honor that as a part of our conversation. And lastly, I want to touch on abandonment trauma. When you do have a history of abandonment showing up in your relationships and also having some sensitivity to that, this can speak to childhood wounds that you have that are unresolved. This can also talk about neglect and how you might be feeling neglected in your connections and your relationships. And this can also just lead to inconsistency in your relationships in terms of you not being able to maintain stable and healthy connections. Now let's move on to the reframe. I want to invite you to the understanding that not all endings are abandonments. And that really informs the title that I came up with for this video. I want to share with you a really brief story around myself in a similar situation where I was exploring and addressing some abandonment wounds. I remember I was having a conversation with one of my brothers, and I was talking about a relationship that was really important to me that ended abruptly and unexpectedly. And at the time, I was still very much in pain about the ending of this relationship. And my brother said to me, well, maybe it was just y'all time. And I remember I got so angry. I was angry at him for saying it. I was still angry about the situation. And it took me a while to really process and work through what I needed to, just around what happened and the meaning that I wanted to make of it. But eventually I came around and I thought to myself about this conversation that I had with my brother, like, you're right. It was our time to let go and to part ways. And that is a lot of what is informing the topic for this video, that not all endings are abandonments. And not everyone is leaving you. Not everyone that leaves you is abandoning you. Sometimes it's just life. Sometimes it is your future self making space and kind of clearing space, doing a clearing to welcome in whatever new relationships, new connections, new resources that you may have coming in. And sometimes what can happen with abandonment is that you're not actually grieving the situation or the person. You are focused on the illusion of what it could have been, or maybe what you had hoped it could be. You could also be clinging to whatever idea you've created about this relationship or about this person in your mind, and being attached to that and not necessarily the connection or the relationship that you had with this person, or even the environment, because sometimes, our environments can be relevant as we talk through abandonment as well. And I think what came up for me when I was in my reflections and just as I was thinking about this conversation with my brother, I got really sad when I thought about it. And I had to acknowledge that I was sad that me and this other person weren't going to be able to see the best of each other. And that was really painful for me to realize and acknowledge with myself. And that was a part of my grief process, and also just a part of acknowledging the abandonment wounds that were there, and also how this particular relationship activated those abandonment wounds. So I think that one other thing that I want to share is that if you decide to let go, or when you are ready to let go, I want to reframe, when you're ready to let go, it's not necessarily that you don't care. It is that you are honoring the situation for what it was, and you are practicing acceptance around it being time for that connection to end. And sometimes just for the time being, because as you may know, there's a possibility for people to connect and bump into each other, and sometimes even reestablish whatever connection or relationship was there. That is not always the case, but sometimes the conditions are present for that to happen. But I want to just share with you that sometimes people aren't leaving your life or walking away from you because they're trying to be cruel. Sometimes it's just out of their own limitations. Sometimes it's because they know that they can't meet whatever needs you have. Sometimes people don't know what to say and they just walk away. They just leave. And sometimes people just outgrow each other. I've talked a lot here about evolution and around, releasing even your old self. And this is no different. There is a possibility that people outgrow each other. Even the longest standing relationships and sometimes the most meaningful ones have to come to an end at some point. So there's also the possibility of outgrowing each other. And something else that I want to mention around just letting go and exploring abandonment issues is thinking about your relationship with rejection and any rejection sensitivity that you might have, and being able to discern the difference between when I am being rejected and when I'm being redirected. And sometimes it's both. And being able to know the difference between the two takes discernment. It takes you having an awareness within yourself. And that also cannot come until after you've had some thoughtful reflection around that situation. When I go back to talking about the situation that I spoke of in my personal life recently, it took me some time to really work through and get clear on with myself, what did this person come in my life to teach me? What are the lessons that I can now move forward with as a result of having this experience? And what was the purpose of this person's presence in my life? And when you really sit with those questions, you can really come up with and get clear on what the meaning of that relationship is and what meaning you want to make of it in terms of putting it in the rejection category or the redirection, or both, again, because sometimes it can be both. I want to move now into talking about how to heal and overcome these issues and really reclaim your power. So when you think about abandonment, and I mentioned this in a previous video too, that I will connect to this video that I also did on the topic of abandonment. But abandonment wounds are not just about the people who have left us. It's also about the parts of ourselves that we've abandoned to keep these people around, or to remain in connections that we may have outgrown. And I want to give you a couple of reflection questions to just sit with. I want you to ask yourself, if there's a particular situation that you have in mind as you're watching this video, what part of you feels triggered by this loss or by this person leaving your life? And also, is there an old story that this particular situation is activating for you or calling back to your attention? When you think about healing your abandonment wounds and issues, it's really, really important that you set boundaries, both for yourself and others, in terms of how you expect to be treated, what you know you can offer, and how you can show up in your connections and in your relationships. It also takes an immense amount of self-trust. So being really clear with yourself on what your needs are in your relationships, and even setting up checkpoints in your connections, in your relationships, whether it's a friendship or a professional relationship or even a romantic relationship. Having it be a regular practice with this other person or with this community, if it's more than one person, where y'all can check in with each other and give each other feedback around some things that may need to adjust or shift. Sometimes when someone leaves or walks away from a situation, it could be that there's something happening in the connection that's not working for them or that doesn't feel good. And so by creating a space where both you and the other person or the other parties can come to discuss issues, to ask questions, to give feedback, that can also help you to heal any abandonment issues and also practice advocating for yourself. Something else that I want to mention that I think is really, really important throughout this whole process is making sure that you are creating space for processing grief. So I mentioned in the beginning that when you think about someone leaving your life or walking away from you, there may be grief for you to process. And it's important that you give yourself the space and the time to actually process that grief and acknowledge it with yourself. I also want to just normalize the need for support as you continue to work through this and move through this on your own. I want to give you a few suggestions. I would definitely I would encourage you to pursue individual therapy if that feels safe for you and if your resources align with doing that. I'm also going to give another shameless plug to sound therapy as a sound journey practitioner. What I found is that sound can hold space for so many things, and it can create this container for whatever it is that is inside of you or whatever it is that's going on for you to come up and come out in the form of memories, in the form of thoughts, and many times in the form of clarity around what happened, why it happened, and how you need to move forward. I also want to talk about the importance of somatic work. So I talk about this here again a lot, just about your relationship with your body and how important that is for the relationship you have with yourself. But somatic work and somatic therapy and other somatic practices, which sound therapy is also considered a somatic practice, but somatic work can help you to notice any subtle changes and shifts in your body so that they can speak to you around how you experience abandonment. Like when these different sensations are showing up in your body, and you can link them to abandonment. And this also helps to increase your awareness around like how do I know when my abandonment issues or my abandonment wounds are triggered? And somatic practice is one of those. I also want to just mention or end with reminding you that abandonment is often rooted in unmet needs from your childhood. And so this is why I definitely want you to have in your toolbox inner child healing. I did a video last week around harmonizing your relationship with your adult self and your inner child, which is one of my favorite topics that I've talked about so far here. I encourage you to check that out. But inner child healing and deep inner child work is another pathway for you just to healing and reclaiming your power around abandonment issues and abandonment wounds. I want to close just by sharing with you that letting go can be really, really painful, and it can also be challenging, and it may take you some time, but it is the greatest act of self-love and self-preservation. It is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to yourself. I won't talk about this here at length, but I am in a season right now and have talked about it a lot here where I am really embracing impermanence. This idea that everything has its end. And I think that embracing impermanence supports us in being able to open our hearts to love and to connection, but also to not try to control anyone or anything. And so when the time comes to let go, it's so much easier because you weren't clinging that tightly in the first place. And by clinging tightly, I don't mean that you weren't invested or that you didn't care about this person or the connection or the environment, but that you knew that this thing or this person was here for you to experience for a limited time, and that you have had an awareness all along that an end will come at some point. I also want to just give you some flowers and share with you that you are not unlovable because they walked away. You are not less than because they left. You got to experience the person just long enough for whatever it is that you needed to be able to move forward in your own journey. And now it's time to let go. If any of this resonates, I want you to know that you are not alone. Please, please, please drop a purple heart in the comments if you are reclaiming your peace, if you are exploring and just working through any abandonment issues, any abandonment wounds. I see purple hearts as a symbol of pure unconditional love, of power, of expansiveness. So please, please drop a purple heart in the comments. I also invite you to like and or share this video. Also subscribe to the channel and feel free to read my article on the same topic, which I will link down below in the description of this video. Well, that is all that I have for y'all for today. I look forward to connecting with y'all again soon. But in the meantime, reconnect with you. Peace, y'all.